Okay, and as your guys are doing that, just to help the judges identify and be able to properly note on the scoring sheet who's doing what, I do appreciate that over in chat. Other than that, are both sides ready for trial?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. All right, and we are in a different format, and I don't think that there's any particular procedure that is being used. I do think it's helpful if the other members of the team, as well as coaches and people watching, are both muted and their video is off. And that way, the only people present are the scoring judges, the attorney that's doing, either the opening or the direct, and then of course the witness, and then the attorney on the opposite side that would either be objecting to an opening or cross-examining the witness. If their video is present, I think that helps easily identify who's talking if the other team members are not on audio or video at that time. So hopefully that's okay with everybody here. Please lodge any objections to that in chat, and we can address those. Other than that,
Your Honor, you cut out. We still cannot hear you.
Use them in photos or promotional materials later. I'm asking if anyone in the gallery who's connected with the teams but not competing to leave the courtroom. So if you are connected with the teams, you may not watch other team rounds with the exceptions identified in 4.3. So just to make sure that no gallery member is in fact present that shouldn't be, and if you are, please leave the courtroom at this time. Okay, I will remind the teams that no recesses are allowed with the exception of those granted for a health emergency. Please notify me in chat if there is a need for a break. And then of course, if it's an emergency one, please feel free to speak up. Especially between the end of witness exam and closing arguments, we will not have any recesses. I'm going to ask each scoring panelist at this time to do their best to look at the members of the team prior to beginning and notify me if there's any reason to believe there's a bias or conflict. And so if the scoring panelists can do that now, and again, same with team members, if you identify or know any of the judges present. I'll remind the team and coaches that any disputes arising out of this competition must be reported in accordance with the competition rules. I'll remind the team that their compliance with time requirements will be considered in scoring individual performances. I'm going to confirm that there's no coach or team members seated other than the timekeeper seated in the jury box. Again, since we're in such a strange format, electronic communication between team members is of course allowed, but you may not communicate with any non-team member or coach during the pendency of the trial. Okay, at this time, if the prosecution would like to introduce the participating team members, please.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury, and opposing counsel. My name is Ella Walters, and today I will be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the prosecution, conducting the direct examination of Kyle Kuzak, and the cross-examination of Professor Van Owen.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Lily Radowski, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Jordan Markowitz and the cross-examination of Taylor Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Jordan Ryan, and today I will be conducting the direct examination of Alex Cifuentes, the cross-examination of Avery Becker, as well as delivering closing arguments on behalf of the prosecution. At this time, may our witnesses please introduce themselves?
Yes, thank you.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Olivia Longi, and today I am Alex Cifuentes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, and members of the jury. My name is Braden Kerr, and today I am Kyle Kuzak.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Charlotte Combe, and today I am Jordan Markowitz.
Okay, thank you. Would the members of the defense team please introduce yourselves?
Good morning, Your Honor, opposing counsel, members of the jury. My name is Ella Thomas, and I will be conducting the direct examination of Taylor Perkins, the cross-examination of Kyle Kuzak, and I will be delivering the opening statement on behalf of the defense.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, opposing counsel. My name is Natalie Galgano, and today I will be conducting the direct of Avery Becker and the cross-examination of Alex Cifuentes.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, opposing counsel, and members of the jury. My name is Kate Snaringer. Today I will be conducting the direct of Blake Van Owen, the cross of Jordan Markowitz, as well as conducting the closing statement on behalf of the defense. Now may our witnesses please introduce themselves.
Yes, thank you.
My name is Jacob Durso, and today I am Blake Van Owen.
Your Honor, members of the jury, I am Darwin Ortiz Garcia, and today I am Tyler Perkins.
Good afternoon, Your Honor, members of the jury. My name is Marion Damtu, and today I am Avery Becker.
All right, thank you. At this time, I am going to swear in our team members, the gallery, and the scoring panelists, as well as witnesses. I'm going to start with the team members. I'm going to request that you virtually stand up and raise your right hand. You don't have to stand up, but constructively stand up and raise your right hand. All right. Thank you. Witnesses? Witnesses, do you promise that the testimony you are about to give will faithfully and truthfully conform to your witness statements, that you will not add material facts or opinions which are not contained in the case problem, and that you will follow the rules and procedures of the mock trial competition? Okay.
I do.
Gallery. Go ahead. Gallery members, including teachers and attorney coaches, family members and friends, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to represent yourselves as positive role models and to behave in a manner that exemplifies ethical and professional sportsmanship during and after this mock trial round? All right, and finally, scoring panelists, please raise your right hands. Do you promise to adjudicate the mock trial competition as fairly and objectively as possible in accordance with the facts, procedures, and rules of the mock trial competition? Okay, Thank you. At this time, we are ready to begin the mock trial competition. Prosecution, are there any preliminary matters?
Yes, Your Honor. First, we ask that the stipulations be constructively read into the record.
Granted.
Next, we ask that if any time the court cannot see or hear a witness or lawyer presenting, that the court may intervene so that the problem can be fixed, and that if after 15 seconds the problem continues, we'd be able to stop time to fix that problem.
That will be granted. I'm going to also grant that both to Ms. Moore and Ms. Page. If they, for any reason, are having technical difficulties and need to pop in, they can do so. In terms of the time frame, that is a new area. What I will do is we will address any time issues on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, Your Honor. Next, we ask that we be able to screen share exhibits before they are admitted for the purposes of identification by the witnesses.
Yes, all exhibits may be screen shared. They're constructively shared solely between attorneys as well as the presiding judge. Once admitted, they may then be considered published to the jury.
We also ask that witnesses be allowed to annotate exhibits once they have been admitted into evidence.
That'll be granted pending any objections by the opposing counsel.
And lastly, Your Honor, we ask that the typical job of the prosecution to identify the defendant be waived because of the online format.
I'm going to actually deny that. I do believe that through the course of it, you can identify if necessary.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further preliminary matters.
Does the defense have any preliminary matters?
No, we just ask that these same matters be applied for the defense as well.
That is granted.
Thank you.
All right, at this time, does the prosecution wish to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. She wanted revenge. She got it. On March 6th, 2020, Avery Becker was mad. After all, how could she not be? She had just been kicked off her school's mock trial team, a team that she had been a part of since freshman year, a team that she had poured her heart and soul and time into, all for it to be ripped away. She begged her coach, Mackenzie Brackman, to let her back on, but he ignored her. Heartbroken after her expulsion, she vowed to get back at her coach, even if it was the last thing she ever did. And on March 6th, 2020, Avery Becker got her chance. She came up with a plan to get even, a plan to vandalize Mr. Brackman's home. On March 6th, she did just that. She went to the Brackman residence to make him feel as frustrated and betrayed as she had felt. When she arrived, she beelined to the front door, but found it locked. Disappointed, she rounded the house to the back door when suddenly she saw none other than Coach Brackman himself, armed with a deadly knife. Realizing that she was running out of time and options, she frantically struggled with Mr. Brackman for the knife. She eventually won, stabbing him in the back and fleeing as fast as she could. In today's case, the defendant Avery Becker has been charged with felony murder in the first degree and burglary in the second degree. As the prosecution, we hold the burden of proof, which means that we must prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that the defendant unlawfully entered the Brackman residence with the intention of causing damage to his property, and while the defendant was there, Mr. Brackman was killed. Now, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we don't have to prove to you that Avery Becker went to the Brackman residence with the intent to kill Mr. Brackman, but simply that it was Avery Becker who did. We will meet this burden by proving to you that she wanted revenge and that she got it. We will meet this burden by proving to you that it was Avery Becker who committed these crimes, that it was Avery Becker who killed Mackenzie Brackman. She wanted revenge. She got it. Today, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll hear from Alex Cifuentes, a friend of the defendant, who will bring light to the rocky relationship between Mr. Brackman and Miss Becker. She'll tell you about a series of text conversations that took place between herself and the defendant. And she'll tell you that in these text conversations, the defendant Avery Becker planned to break in and vandalize Mr. Brackman's home. Next, you'll hear from Kyle Kuzak, a crime scene reconstruction investigator, about physical evidence found at the scene. He'll tell you that this evidence proves his theory that this horrific tragedy was a break-in gone wrong. Finally, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll hear from Detective Jordan Markowitz about the defendant's cell phone records. She'll tell you that these records show that the defendant's phone connected to the cell tower nearest the Brackman residence not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. She'll tell you that these records show that the defendant was at the Brackman residence at the exact time of the murder. She wanted revenge, and she got it. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Jordan Ryan, will stand before you and tell you that Avery Becker wanted revenge. And ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you'll hear that she got it. At the end of today's trial, my co-counsel will stand before you and ask you for a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the defense wish to give an opening statement?
Yes, Your Honor. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, today you're going to hear about the murder of high school mock trial coach Mackenzie Brackman. He was stabbed in the back at his own house by a masked intruder on March 6, 2020. This intruder was caught on video entering the house through the back door. Today, the prosecution is going to try to tell you that that masked intruder was the defendant, Avery Becker. But as you will see, the police and the prosecution have settled for the easy conclusion. Today, you're going to hear about the argument that Avery Becker and Coach Brackman got into a few days before his murder. The prosecution believes this is enough motive for murder. However, the defense believes differently. In today's case, Avery Becker has been charged with second-degree burglary and felony murder. The prosecution has the burden of proof. It is their job to prove that Avery Becker committed these crimes beyond a reasonable doubt. To prove burglary, the prosecution has to prove that Avery Becker unlawfully entered Mackenzie Brackman's house with the intent to damage Coach Brackman's property. To prove felony murder, the prosecution has to prove that someone died while Avery Becker was committing that burglary. To convict Avery Becker, you must be convinced beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker murdered her mock trial coach. But after you have seen all the evidence, you will see that there is a tremendous amount of doubt because the prosecution has settled for the easy conclusion. Ladies and gentlemen, the defense does not have the burden of proof and does not need to call any witnesses to the stand, but we will, in order to show you how the prosecution has rushed to an easy conclusion. First, we will show you that the investigation was sloppy and rushed. Detectives at the crime scene found no evidence linking Avery Becker to that crime scene. Not a hair, shoe print, fingerprint, or even one speck of DNA evidence. There are ring video recordings of the intruder entering the house. However, these recordings do not show any defining characteristics such as hair color or skin color. Instead, it only shows a vague interpretation of height and build. But many people in the state of Colorado have a similar height and build as the person in these videos. This again shows that the prosecution has settled for an easy conclusion. Next, we will show you that there is someone else who could have committed this crime. The alternative suspect in this murder, Blair Rollins, was not thoroughly investigated. Mr. Rollins' father was put to jail and Coach Brackman was his lawyer. Mr. Rollins left the courtroom claiming he would get Brackman if it was the last thing he did. The defense believes that because Mr. Rollins is still in jail, that Blair Rollins, Mr. Rollins' son, has a clear motive to murder Coach Brackman. Blair Rollins also matches the general height and build in these ring videos, was not present at school the day of Coach Brackman's murder, and has mysteriously disappeared since the day of the murder. You will hear from Mr. Blake Van Owen, who is an expert in crime scene reconstruction and cell phone data analysis. He is one of our witnesses. Mr. Van Owen believes that the investigation was sloppy and rushed, and that Mr. Blair Rollins is a possible suspect in this crime. This is further reason to believe that the prosecution has settled for the easy conclusion. Finally, you will see that Avery Becker could not have possibly committed these crimes simply because Mrs. Becker has an alibi. The defendant sitting in front of you right now was with another person the entire day that Mr. Brackman was murdered. Mr. Taylor Perkins is one of our witnesses, and he will testify that he was with Miss Becker the entire day of Mr. Brackman's murder. Miss Becker will also take the stand in her own defense and will testify that she was with Mr. Perkins all day on March 6, 2020. Today, we will show you that the prosecution has settled for an easy conclusion. And at the end of today's trial, my co-counsel, Kate Schneringer, will stand before you and ask you to return a verdict of not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Would the prosecution like to call their first witness?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Alex Cifuentes to the stand. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good morning, y'all. My name is Alexandria Cifuentes.
Tell us a little bit about yourself, Ms. Cifuentes.
Well, I recently took a physical journey here to Denver from Fort Worth, Texas. I moved, and along with that, I also took a spiritual journey to heal my soul.
Ms. Cifuentes, that's very nice, but I mean, how do you spend your time? What kinds of things do you do?
Oh, honey, you should have just asked that. Well, I enjoy tarot reading. I do some palm reading from time to time, and I really enjoy mock trial.
Where do you participate in mock trial?
At CHS, also known as Colorado High School.
And how do you know the defendant, Avery Becker?
Avery? Well, she introduced me to mock trial, of course.
Now, Ms. Cifuentes, before we get any further, could you explain what exactly is mock trial?
Mock trial is this fun little thing. It's kind of like a play, but instead of putting on a play, we put on a court case, and students play lawyers and witnesses.
Does it take a lot of time to prepare for that?
It sure does. We ain't CHS for nothing.
And who coached yourself and Avery Becker at mock trial?
Mr. B, Coach Brackman, he had the nicest aura, and he was the kindest Aries I ever met.
Did people on your team get along with each other and Mr. Brackman?
Yeah, we sure did. For the most part.
What do you mean for the most part?
Well, Avery, she had a little tendency to show up late, not be prepared, and oh my Lord, regionals was almost a fiasco.
Why was it almost a fiasco?
Well, Avery had been showing up late, not doing what she needed to do, and she got demoted to the B team and then somehow wormed her way up to the A team. I don't even know, but it was a whole thing.
Well, Ms. Cifuentes, even after all that happened, did your team do well at regionals?
We sure did. We qualified for state, and Avery won a couple awards.
What did your team have to do to prepare after qualifying for state?
We practiced real hard. You know, we were at practice a couple days after the regional tournament when something happened.
What happened?
Avery and Mr. B got into an argument. I mean, Mr. B is an Aries and Avery's a Taurus, so I can't blame them. But they was arguing over Avery's awards.
What did the defendant do as a result of that argument?
Avery stormed out and Mr. B followed her. You know, I don't really know what happened after that, but I do know that Avery got kicked off the mock trial team permanently.
So even after the defendant got kicked off the mock trial team permanently, did you stay in contact?
Of course I did. I gotta show Avery that Southern hospitality. We texted from time to time.
Would you recognize pictures of those texts if we were to show them to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, at this time, I ask that my co-counsel please screen share Exhibit 14.
She may.
Your Honor, could we pause time just to make sure my co-counsel's not having any technical difficulties?
Yes.
There we go.
All right, please restart time.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Cifuentes, what are these?
Those are the texts between myself and Avery.
Are those fair and accurate representations of the texts that were sent?
They are.
Have they been changed or altered in any way since you last saw them or since they were originally sent?
Not at all.
And to be clear, who sent you these texts?
Miss Avery Becker did.
Your Honor, at this time, we ask that Exhibit 14 be admitted into evidence.
Any objection?
Objection, hearsay.
Response?
Yes, Your Honor. All statements made by Avery Becker fall under Rule 801D2, a statement of a party opponent, and any statements made by Ms. Cifuentes are not being used for any truth of the matter asserted, but for the effect on the listener, Avery Becker.
Okay, I'm going to overrule the objection. Exhibit 14 will be admitted. You may publish for the jury.
Ms. Cifuentes, what did the defendant originally text you about?
Avery had texted me about getting back on the mock trial team.
Did you try to help her?
Of course I did. Avery's my friend.
Were you successful?
I was not, I talked to Mr. Brackman. I prayed to my crystals. I hoped that the stars would align, but Mr. B was not having it.
Did you tell the defendant that they weren't going to be let back on the mock trial team?
I did tell Avery, and her reaction, it worried me.
Why did it worry you?
Avery texted me and said, well, if he's still upset about his car, then he's going to be real upset when he sees what I do to his house.
How did you respond to that?
I asked Avery what she was going to do.
And what did the defendant tell you?
Avery texted and said, I'm going to wait until he's at work, then break in and trash it.
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
cross-examination?
Yes, yes, Your Honor. So, Ms. Cifuentes, as you said earlier, you knew Avery Becker from mock trial,
I did.
and you believe that Avery Becker killed your coach, Mackenzie Brackman.
Well, sure, I believe that. I mean, there are the texts right there of Avery's plan to do it, and Avery had already done something awful to get kicked off the mock trial team. I mean, it's all right there.
So, yes, you believe she killed him.
I do.
And you claim that you are also Avery's friend.
I do.
And so, you worked hard at mock trial.
Of course I did. I work hard at anything. I'm a Libra.
And it made you nervous or anxious when Avery was always show up unprepared.
Well, sure, it made everybody anxious.
And it irked you when Avery could just make things up on the fly.
Avery certainly had a knack for mock trial. I ain't denying that.
But it was irking.
Sometimes.
And she was eventually demoted for her attitude.
Avery was late, and Mr. B didn't like when she came unprepared, so she did get demoted to the Bay team.
So, yes.
Yes.
And it must have been a slap in the face when she got awards at regionals and she didn't work as hard.
Well, that's just mock trial, you know? Everything changes.
But it hurt because you put the effort in and she didn't.
Of course it hurt. I obviously wanted those awards, but Avery did get them. She earned them at that competition fair and square.
And after regionals, Avery was kicked off the team.
Yes, she was.
And you felt with Avery being gone, the team was better off.
Well, I knew I'd get a bigger role, and we wouldn't be so stressed having to worry about her underpreparedness. I mean, Lord, it was stressful.
So it was a relief.
Sure.
And as we saw earlier, you claimed those text messages came from Avery shortly before Coach Brackman's murder.
Yes, ma'am, they did.
And you got a call from a police detective asking about those messages.
I did, yes.
So you went down to the station to interview.
Oh, I did, sure.
And at the interview, you didn't bring your phone with you.
Oh, Lord, I'm embarrassed to God. It was charged, that phone. It did not hold. So I was charging it, and so frazzled by the police interview, I totally forgot.
I'm sorry, Ms. Cifuentes, I'm having a connection problem. Can I ask my question again and you answer?
Sure thing, honey.
You didn't bring your phone with you to the interview, correct?
No, I didn't. It wasn't holding charge, so I was charging it, and when I left to go do the interview, I totally forgot.
So when you arrived, you did not have the phone.
I did not.
And instead of giving the phone to the police, you just sent screenshots.
Well, I offered to bring the phone in, but the detective told me it ain't necessary and that screenshots would do just fine.
So the only messages that the detective physically saw were screenshots.
That's correct. I offered the phone, but they just didn't want it.
And so the detective never got to see your physical phone.
No, they did not.
So they never saw the original messages on the phone.
No, I shared the screenshots as requested, and that was that. They did not want my phone.
I didn't ask if they saw the screenshots. I asked if they saw the original messages.
No, they did not.
And later, you refused to talk to a private investigator.
That is correct.
And this was because you believed the investigator was working for the defense.
Yes.
And so you refused to talk to an investigator that was trying to help your friend.
I refuse to talk to them because I know that the job of the defense ain't to tell the truth. It's to get their client acquitted of any charges.
But you refused to talk to the investigator.
Yes, I did refuse.
No further questions, Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.
Okay. Redirect.
No redirect, Your Honor.
All right, at this time, the witness may be released.
Thank you, ma'am.
Does the prosecution have any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Kyle Kuzak to the stand.
Can you all hear me? Can you,
Mr. Kuzak, it appears that we can hear you, but we cannot see you.
okay, here's the button. Okay. Okay, there we go. That's better. My grandkids were using this a little while ago and messed with some of the stuff.
That's all right, Mr. Kuzak. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Kyle Kuzak.
What do you do for a living?
I'm a crime scene investigator, or a crime scene reconstructor.
Could you briefly describe what crime scene reconstruction is?
Yes, it's the process of taking the evidence from the scene of a crime and reconstructing what a plausible scenario would have been for that crime to have been committed.
What experience do you have?
I've done this for the past 19 years, and I'm only 3 days away from retirement, so.
Congratulations, Mr. Kuzak. What do you specialize in?
I specialize mainly in complex crimes like homicide, burglary, and home invasion.
Were you certified for your position?
Yeah, I have a certification from the Colorado Bureau of Investigation.
How are you involved in today's case?
I'm the chief crime scene reconstructor for the police.
What facts or evidence did you rely on to come to your conclusion?
I read through all the witness statements, I reviewed all the exhibits, and I even got the chance to visit the crime scene.
Were these facts or evidence sufficient?
They were, yes.
What methods did you use?
I used the standard 5-step reconstruction procedure used by almost every crime scene investigator.
Was this method reliable?
Yes, very.
At this time, the prosecution wishes to tender Kyle Kuzak as an expert in crime scene reconstruction.
Any objection or voir dire? I believe that was a no. At this time, I will admit you as an expert in crime scene reconstruction. You may continue.
Now, Mr. Kuzak, let's briefly talk about your investigation. Did you visit the crime scene?
I did, yes.
Do you know if the police visited the crime scene?
I am pretty sure they did, yes.
What did the police find?
They found a dead body laying on the ground.
Did they find a murder weapon?
Yes, they found a bloody knife.
Where was this bloody knife found?
It was found right near the body.
Would you recognize a picture of both the body and the bloody knife if I showed them to you?
Yes, I would.
Your Honor, if my co-counsel may begin screen sharing Exhibit 4 and 5.
You may.
Mr. Kuzak, do you recognize Exhibit 4?
Yeah, that's a picture of the dead body found at the crime scene.
Exhibit 5?
That's a picture of the murder weapon.
Do they appear to have been altered in any way?
It doesn't look like it, no.
Are these fair and accurate depictions of the exhibits?
Yes, they are.
At this time, the prosecution wishes to admit Exhibit 4 and 5 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
All right, at this time, Exhibit 4 and Exhibit 5 have been admitted. You may publish them to the jury.
If my co-counsel may end screen sharing. Were you able to determine where the knife came from?
Yes, I was.
How?
We discovered that there was an open drawer full of knives open in the kitchen, as well as a large kitchen knife missing from Mr. Brackman's knife set.
Why was this significant?
Well, it showed the murder weapon wasn't brought with the perpetrator when they committed the crime, but instead came from inside the house.
Are you aware of the cause of death?
I am, yes.
How? Or what is it, sorry?
The cause of death, it was a stabbing.
What other evidence was found at the crime scene?
Well, there was also a set of scuff marks found near the back door and a broken plate found in the kitchen.
Why was this significant?
Well, these were signs that indicated there was some kind of struggle in this case, possibly some kind of fight.
Do you know if Mr. Brackman had any security system?
I do, yes.
What security system?
He had one of those newfangled ring security systems. I don't really know how it works, but it hooks right to your phone. Really convenient like that.
Were you able to obtain any video from these Ring doorbells?
Yeah, one of the guys in our office who's real good with computers was able to get it.
Have you viewed these videos?
Yes, I have.
What do they depict?
They depict someone going up to the front door of the Brackman house, going around back through the gate, going in through the back door, and running out through the front door.
Do you know if these videos have been identified in court as exhibits today?
They have, yes.
What numbers?
I believe the most relevant ones are probably exhibits 12 and 13.
Did they appear to have been altered in any way?
From what I've seen, they have not appeared to be altered.
At this time, the prosecution wishes to admit Exhibit 12 and 13 into evidence.
Any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Okay, exhibits will be admitted into evidence and you may publish them for the jury.
Your Honor, if my co-counsel may begin screen sharing what has just been admitted as Exhibit 12.
She may.
Mr. Kuzak, what does Exhibit 12 depict?
Oh, apart from that slight error there, can't trust computers these days, but it depicts someone, the perpetrator, going in through the back door of the Brackman residence.
Were you able to reach any conclusion about what happened inside the house?
Yes, I was.
What was that conclusion?
So the perpetrator went around back after not being able to get in through the front door, entered the residence where Mr. Brackman was alerted either by the security system or just by masked intruder coming into his house. He went to grab some kind of weapon to defend himself, where he grabbed a butcher knife or a kitchen knife to defend himself. And then some kind of fight or struggle ensued where Mr. Brackman was disarmed, and eventually that knife was used to stab him in the back.
Finally, Mr. Kuzak, what conclusions did the evidence at the scene lead you to?
Well, the two main conclusions, if you take away nothing else, is first, that the crime being committed was a burglary gone wrong, and second, that the victim was stabbed to death after some kind of struggle.
Thank you. No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning, Mr. Kuzak. We're going to get right into it, starting with the murder weapon. You found a bloody knife at the crime scene, correct?
I didn't find it, but it was some of the evidence I reviewed.
And you believe that the murder weapon is this knife?
I mean, there are very few times when you find a bloody knife at a crime scene and it isn't the murder weapon.
All right. And you believe that this murder weapon belonged to Mr. Brackman?
Yes, there's a lot of evidence to show that.
But are you aware that the bloody knife was a Chicago cutlery knife?
Yes, I am.
Yet the knives in the knife block in Mr. Brackman's kitchen belonged to a J.A. Kensel's knife set.
I believe the brand was J.A. Hinkle's. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, yes, the knives in his knife block were of that brand.
So the bloody knife doesn't match the knives in the block in the kitchen?
It doesn't match the knives in the knife block. It couldn't match some set of knives that was in the open drawer of knives. But those two things combined make it very, very probable that the knife came from inside Mr. Brackman's home.
But there is a possibility that someone could have brought a knife outside of Mr. Brackman's home, correct?
I mean, you saw that video too, and I didn't see a knife there. It's possible that they were concealing one, but I didn't see it.
But it is physically possible.
It is possible, but there are a lot of things that are possible I wouldn't put money on. I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question. You may have cut out.
Hear me? Mr. Kuzak, are you there?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
All right. It is possible that the murder weapon came from outside of the house, correct?
Yeah, it is possible.
All right. You also noted scuff marks on the floor, correct?
Yes.
And you noted that those scuff marks indicated a struggle between the killer and the victim?
Yes, they did.
But the scuff marks could have occurred at any time before the murder.
They could have. I had no way to really date them, but scuff marks like that would have been probably created in some kind of altercation.
But you have no proof that the scuff marks were created by the struggle.
I mean, it depends on what you count as proof, because I would see these more as proof of the struggle happening, and rather than anything else.
All right. You simply assume that these scuff marks were caused because of the struggle.
No, these indicated a struggle.
All right. And you didn't find any physical evidence that Avery Becker was at the crime scene, correct?
I mean, there wasn't any fingerprints or DNA, but there were a few things like the height and build of the perpetrator in the video that indicate that that Avery Becker was there.
So you didn't find shoe prints, hair prints, fingerprints, anything along those lines?
I haven't heard of such thing as a hair print, but I did not find any of those, no.
All right. And you saw what the intruder was wearing in the ring videos, correct?
Yeah, I did.
And you, as you said previously, you can determine a general height and weight from these videos.
Yes.
but you can't clearly state the exact height and weight of the person in those videos, correct?
No, it's very difficult to do that, but the height and build did match the defendant.
All right. Does the general height and weight match anyone else in this investigation?
It's possible. I haven't looked at every little bit, but I think it's possible.
All right. Are you aware that Blair Rollins fits with the...
You cut out again. Oh, I couldn't hear your question.
All right. You are aware that Blair Rollins matches the general height and weight in these ring videos?
Blair Rollins? Is that crackpot theory that what's his name? Van Owens was talking about? Yeah, I think he said something about that. I don't necessarily know how likely that is.
All right. Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Kuzak, did the lack of DNA evidence found at the scene make your investigation any less reliable?
No. I think there was plenty of other evidence to suggest Avery Becker was present at the scene of the crime.
Like what?
Well, I believe you have the height and build of the person in the video, but Detective Markowitz has a lot of other very interesting evidence to back this up.
Thank you. No further questions.
Based on those questions, is there any recross?
I don't believe that the rules allow a real recross, Your Honor.
All right, at this time then, the witness may step down. Does the prosecution have any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The prosecution calls Detective Jordan Markowitz to the stand. May I
You may
proceed?
question. Yeah.
Good afternoon. Would you please introduce yourself to the court?
Good afternoon. My name is Jordan Markowitz. I'm a detective with the Denver Police Department.
How were you involved in today's case, Detective?
Ma'am, I was one of the lead investigators regarding the murder of Mackenzie Brackman.
How long have you worked in law enforcement?
I've been with the DPD for around 13 years now. I've been a detective for the past 7 years.
And do you have any specialized training?
Yes, ma'am. The majority of my training is in regards to cell phones. I have a certification in cell phone technology and cell phone forensic data recovery from the American Academy of Law Enforcement.
What did this certification entail?
Well, ma'am, I had to pass the certification test as well as take a certification course. Through this, I now have extensive knowledge on forensic data recovery and how to analyze it in cases.
And have you had a chance to use this knowledge in your work before?
Yes, ma'am. I've downloaded the contents of hundreds of phones at this point, and I've also used call detail record analysis in over 50 cases.
Did you have a chance to use your knowledge in today's case?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
At this time, the prosecution moves to tender Detective Jordan Markowitz as an expert in cell phone technology and cell data recovery.
Thank you. Is there any objection or voir dire?
No objections, Your Honor.
All right. He will be admitted as an expert in those areas, and you may proceed.
Detective, you mentioned that you had a chance to use your knowledge on cell phones in today's case. How were you able to do this?
Well, ma'am, I obtained a warrant to search the phone and call detail records of my primary suspect throughout my investigation, Avery Becker.
What did you obtain from this warrant?
Well, ma'am, this warrant allowed me to search the defendant's cell phone. However, when I asked her attorneys about this, they said she lost her cell phone, so I was not able to do that. But the warrant also gave me access to her call detail records.
How do these call detail records work?
Well, ma'am, I received these call detail records from the defendant's cell service provider. And anytime someone receives a text or a call, a record of the interaction is created. And those are call detail records. So CDRs for short can tell us the time of the communication, the number of other phones involved in the communication, and most importantly, the cell tower with which the cell phone communicated with in that communication.
Why is the cell tower that the phone was communicating with important?
Well, ma'am, based on the cell tower a phone communicates with, we can tell the general area of a phone. Furthermore, at the top of each cell tower, there are 3 antennas. Each antenna covers a 120-degree arc. And depending on which antenna a cell phone connects to, we can also tell the direction a cell phone is coming from.
Did you find anything from the defendant's cell phone records?
Yes, ma'am, I did. I actually made a diagram of my findings.
Would you recognize this diagram if you saw it?
Yes, ma'am, I would.
Your Honor, permission for my witness to screen share Exhibit 15 constructively outside the eyes of the jury.
She may.
One moment, sorry.
Detective, what is this document?
Ma'am, this is the diagram I created based off the call detail records I obtained for Avery Becker's phone the day of the murder.
Is it a fair and accurate copy of the diagram that you made?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Has it been altered or changed in any way since you last saw it?
It has not.
At this time, the prosecution moves to admit Exhibit 15 into evidence.
Any objection?
No objections, Your Honor.
Exhibit 15 is admitted and you may publish it for the jury.
Detective, can you explain what these records showed?
Yes, ma'am. So we found through the call detail records that Avery Becker's phone made 5 different connections with 3 different cell towers the day of the murder. And these are the cell towers that Avery Becker's phone communicated with that are visible on the map.
Can you describe the connection with the first cell tower for the jury?
Yes, ma'am. So the first cell tower we found Avery Becker's phone communicated with, I'm going to circle now. It's at the top of the exhibit, circled in red. So we found that Avery Becker's phone connected to this cell tower at 12:47 p.m. the day of the murder. And this cell tower covers Avery Becker's home, which I'm stamping with an X right now.
Can you describe the connection with the second cell tower?
Yes, ma'am. The second cell tower, I'm going to again circle in red right here. And we found that Avery Becker's phone connected to this cell tower at 12:55 p.m., the day of the murder.
And what does this cell tower cover, Detective?
Ma'am, this cell tower covers Rock Creek Parkway, which is the most logical route from Avery Becker's home to Mr. Brackman's home. And I'm going to stamp an X mark of a place on Rock Creek Parkway.
Now, can you describe the connection with the third cell tower?
Yes, ma'am. So the third cell tower, I'm circling in red at the bottom again. And we found that Avery Becker's phone connected to the cell tower 3 separate times the day of the murder. It connected once at 1:05 p.m., another time at 1:06, and lastly at 1:17 p.m. the day of the murder. And this area covers Mr. Brackman's home, who was murdered that day, and I'm going to stamp his home right here.
Can you point out where the mall is on this map?
Yes, ma'am. The mall is above the second cell tower and slightly to the right. I'm covering it with a check mark right now, or an X mark, my apologies.
Can you point out where the fry shack is?
Yes, ma'am. The fry shack is slightly below and to the right of the second cell tower, and I'm marking an X on that right now as well.
Just to clarify, do either of these locations align with any of the directions of the relevant cell tower antennas?
No, ma'am. As I mentioned earlier, there are 3 antennas at the top of each cell tower, and depending on which one it connects to, we can tell the direction a cell phone is coming from. Avery Becker's phone was not coming from the direction of the mall or the fry shack the day of the murder, as seen on the diagram.
Whose phone were the texts and calls coming from?
Ma'am, all of the texts and calls came from the defendant's good friend, Taylor Perkins.
Finally, Detective, what do these records indicate about the defendant's location on March 6th, 2020?
Ma'am, these records indicate that from 1247 to 105, Avery Becker drove along Rock Creek Parkway, which I am drawing right now, in between these two lakes, and arrived at Mackenzie Brackman's home and was there from 1:05 to 1:17 p.m. the day of the murder.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Let's start with the investigation. You found a bloody knife at the investigation, correct?
I did.
But on that knife, you didn't have any fingerprints or DNA?
Ma'am, the assailant was wearing gloves, so it wouldn't have made sense to find any fingerprints, but we didn't, to answer your question.
So you didn't find any of Avery Becker's DNA anywhere in the household?
Again, as seen in the ring videos entered earlier, the assailant was wearing a hood, a mask, and gloves, but we did not find any DNA.
Okay, thank you. And there was no eyewitnesses of the crime?
No, ma'am. Mackenzie Brackman died, so there was no eyewitnesses for him to report about, and no one saw.
Okay, moving on. Your forensic team took some pictures of some blood drops, correct?
I did. Unfortunately, those were corrupted, but it had no impact on my investigation.
But they were corrupted.
They were. It had no bearing, but they were.
Next, let's talk about the Ring doorbell videos. You did look at the Ring doorbell videos, didn't you?
Yes, ma'am.
And those videos show a person breaking into Miss Coach Brackman's home, correct?
Yes, ma'am, they do.
Your Honor, Exhibit 12 has already been admitted into evidence. Permission to screen share Exhibit 12?
You may.
May my co-counsel please play Exhibit 12? You could see there in the video that there was no way to identify this person.
I wouldn't say that, no.
You couldn't tell race, gender, age of this person?
Ma'am, from the videos, we can tell the estimated height and build of the person, which is key information. However, we can't tell their gender or ethnicity, if that's what you're asking.
So, but that's height and height and build. Many people have the same height, correct?
There's variations in height, ma'am.
But there's such thing as an average height, like 5'4" for women. So people share same height.
The combination of height and build is an important factor. Albeit people do have similar heights, it's still something that we can use and that I use throughout the course of my investigation, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. And let's move on to the text messages you received from Alex Fuentes. You met Alex Fuentes when you were interviewing people, correct?
Yes, I called Miss Fuentes in because she told me of some incriminating text messages she received from Avery Becker.
And you called her in for a full interview, correct?
I did.
And so you asked to see her phone, correct?
Yes, ma'am. At the interview, I did ask to see her phone. She unfortunately forgot it, though.
This was unusual to you, wasn't it?
It was a little unusual, but I understood she might have been nervous to be interviewed by police officers regarding the death of her coach.
But this might have been the only time you ever seen a teenager that didn't have their cell phone on them, correct?
In my very limited experience, yes.
And so you just asked Mr. Fuentes to send you screenshots?
Yes, ma'am. I had no reason to not trust her, and the screenshot sufficed.
But you never had Ms. Fuentes bring in her phone at a later date?
No, ma'am. Again, I had no reason to distrust her. So I used the screenshots throughout the course of my investigation.
But you weren't able to download any of the content on that phone?
Again, ma'am, I was sent the screenshots. I did not download them because there was no need to.
Okay, thank you. And during your investigation, you also reached out to get Ms. Becker's phone, didn't you?
Yes, unfortunately, her lawyers told me she had lost it.
Yes, but sorry, excuse me. Let's move on to the cell phone towers. Most of the cell phone towers connect to the nearest tower, correct?
Yes, the majority of the time they do.
But if the nearest tower is busy, it might be connecting to a further out tower, correct?
A cell phone connects to a cell tower that gives it the best connection. So that's true. If a cell tower is busy, a cell phone will connect to a further away tower.
And so cell phone towers aren't like a GPS.
Ma'am, I never claimed they were. When looking at call detail records, we have to look at a pattern of the evidence. In this case, we looked at the other cell towers Ms. Becker's phone connected with and the amount of times they connected to each tower.
But you can't tell exactly where the cell phone was.
That's not how CDRs are designed to work. No, ma'am.
All you know is the range?
Ma'am, I don't talk about range in my witness statement. Would you still like me to answer that question?
No, thank you. But Ms. Becker's phone could have been reaching out to a different cell phone tower further out.
I would not say so.
But you said that cell phones could reach out to a different tower if it's busy. So it's possible that Ms. Becker's phone could have been connecting to a different tower.
Ma'am, as we saw in Exhibit 15, Avery Becker's phone connected to the bottommost cell tower 3 separate times. 1 time might be an accident, 2 times a coincidence, but 3 times is a pattern. And I believe that Avery Becker's phone connected to that bottommost cell tower that covers Mackenzie Brackman's home.
I'm just looking, it's a yes or no answer. It's possible that it could be reaching out to a different cell phone tower.
Ma'am, if one of the cell towers was busy, that might be a possibility. However, given the fact that her cell phone connected 3 times to 1 tower, I don't think it's likely.
Okay, thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor, just briefly. Now, Detective, what is the likelihood of a cell phone connecting to a cell tower that is not the nearest to it?
Ma'am, this is a rare occurrence. As I stated in cross-examination, a cell tower will only connect to one that is further away if the nearest cell tower is busy. And given the fact that we, again, had 3 connections to the bottommost cell tower, this doesn't seem likely.
Thank you. No further questions.
Based on that question, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Markowitz. You may step down. Does the prosecution have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the prosecution rests.
All right, does the defense have any motions or witnesses they would like to call?
We would like to call Blake Van Owen to the stand.
All right, Mr. Van Owen, you may take the stand and you may begin questioning.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury?
My name is Blake Van Owen.
What is your current occupation?
I am a private investigator, a consultant, and a professor at CU Denver.
Before that, did you have any other jobs?
Yes, in fact, I served as a police officer in the Aurora Police Department.
Did you attend college?
Yes, I attended Ashford University and I obtained a master's degree in criminal justice.
You said you've been a consultant. How many cases have you been a consultant in?
I've consulted in over 100 cases.
What areas have you consulted in?
Various ones: police practices, use of force, false arrest, crime scene reconstruction, and cell phone tower analysis.
Have you testified before?
Yes, I have testified numerous times in court.
In what areas have you testified in?
I've testified as an expert in police practices 12 times, crime scene reconstruction 8 times, and cell phone tower analysis 5 times.
I would now like to tender Blake Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation.
Any objection or voir dire?
Yes, Your Honor, if I could conduct a brief voir dire.
You may.
Good afternoon, Professor Van Owen. You were once a cop, correct?
Yes, I was.
But you were only a cop for 9 months.
Yes.
Now I'd briefly like to talk about your background in crime scene reconstruction. You don't have any formal training in crime scene reconstruction, do you?
No, but I'm self-taught. As I said, I'm a consultant.
But you have no formal training?
No formal, but extensive self-taught training.
You don't have any certifications in crime scene reconstruction?
Not specifically in crime scene reconstruction, no.
Your primary job has never been in crime scene reconstruction.
No, but once again, I've consulted in over 100 cases, many of them being centered around crime scene reconstruction.
But your primary job has never been in crime scene reconstruction, has it? And sorry.
No, apologize, but no. Being a professor takes up a lot of your time, as you might think.
I understand. Now, I'd like to talk to you about your experience in cell phone data. You don't have any formal training in analyzing cell phone data, do you?
No, but the same goes for cell phone data. I've consulted in over 100 cases, once again, many of them being centered around cell tower analysis.
But no formal training?
No formal, but once again, extensive self-taught training.
You have no certifications, do you?
No certifications, but extensive experience.
Once again, no certifications. And the answer to my question is yes, correct?
Yes.
You've never worked as a cell phone data analyst, have you?
No, but I have consulted and studied this area.
Your Honor, at this time, I object to the tendering of Professor Blake Van Owen in crime scene reconstruction, police practices, and cell phone data analysis. Sorry.
Any response?
Your Honor, my witness has just testified that he has a master's in criminal justice and he has been a consultant in over 100 cases. In Rule 702, in order to be an expert witness, he needs education and experience, and my witness has both.
Your Honor, if I may respond.
Briefly.
The witness has not laid any personal knowledge other than experience and has laid no foundation of the experience he has in cell phone analysis. Additionally, he has not explained any of the education he has and what that education consisted of and how his degree in criminal, how that helped him come to his conclusion and get experience in the fields.
All right, thank you. At this time, I am going to overrule the objection. I will admit Mr. Van Owen as an expert in crime scene reconstruction, cell tower analysis, and general police investigation. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Your Honor. What was your role in this case?
I've been hired by the defense to review the police investigation.
Did you reach any conclusions?
Yes, I have concluded that the police department has completely rushed this investigation and they settled for an easy conclusion.
Could you elaborate?
There are 3 areas of the investigation that I am particularly concerned with.
What is your first area of concern?
First, the cell tower records cannot definitively place the defendant's phone at the scene of the crime, let alone the defendant herself.
What's your second area of concern?
Secondly, there are several pieces of evidence carelessly omitted from this investigation.
And what is your third area of concern?
Lastly, the police failed to investigate a crucial suspect with a clear motive to murder the victim.
Let's begin talking about the cell phone records. What conclusions did you reach about the cell phone records?
There's no way to prove the defendant's location just based off of the cell tower data.
How did you reach this conclusion?
Looking through the various cell tower records, you can determine that the defendant could be about 6 miles away from the defendant's house. Using basic logic, apparently beyond that of the police department, you can determine that the defendant's phone being at a location does not prove that the defendant was at said location.
Your Honor, Exhibit 15 has already been admitted into evidence. Permission to screen share Exhibit 15.
You may.
May my co-counsel please share the document? Why are these cell phone records not enough to justify Avery's location?
There are 2 reasons for this.
What was your first reason?
Firstly, all I know is that the cell phone records show that Avery Becker's phone connected to a cell tower within the vicinity of Brackman's home. Cell phones do typically connect when they are within a range of that tower, a range as large as 6 miles. However, cell towers cannot be used as a GPS. Cell phones don't always connect to the closest tower, rather to the one with the strongest signal.
What was the second reason?
Secondly, even if the cell tower data places the defendant's phone at the scene of the crime, this doesn't prove that the defendant herself was at the scene of the crime. Further doubt comes into play with knowledge that Avery Becker lost her phone on the day of the murder.
Did these cell phone records cover a certain area of time?
Yes, the investigation subpoenaed a limited amount of time in relation to the cell phone records.
Okay, thank you. You may take down the document. Let's move on. Did the police examine any of the individual cell phones?
No, they simply accepted easily doctorable screenshots from Alex DeFuentes and used data from cell towers that, of course, cannot be used as a GPS.
Next, let's talk about the crime scene reconstruction. Did you reach any conclusions?
The police's investigation was extremely rushed. Various pieces of evidence were left out of this case. They came to the easy conclusion, but not necessarily the correct one.
Why do you think the police investigation was rushed?
There are 2 reasons as to why I believe the police's investigation was rushed.
What's the first reason?
When observing the crime scene, we can see that photos of several blood spatters around the victim's home were missing.
Why do you believe this?
I have thoroughly examined Detective Markowitz's investigation of the crime scene.
What's your second reason?
The police investigation failed to obtain Alex DeFuentes' cell phone or anyone within a 6-mile radius of the victim's home, for that matter.
Why didn't they obtain Alex DeFuentes' phone?
Once again, they
Objection,
easily...
lack of personal knowledge. Objection, lack of personal knowledge.
And response from defense?
Your Honor, my witness has reviewed the investigation, and he saw that they did not obtain Alex DeFuentes' phone.
I will sustain it as it relates to why they did not obtain the phone unless you can lay further foundation that he would have knowledge as to why they did not obtain the phone.
Okay. Your Honor, my witness has no knowledge. I will move on. Let's move on to the alternative suspect. Did you reach any conclusions about the investigation into an alternative suspect?
Yes, the police investigation completely failed to investigate a crucial suspect that had a more potent and personal motive to kill the victim than the defendant herself.
Who was the suspect?
He was a former CHS student named Blair Rollins.
What methods did you use to find him?
I conducted both a search through past CHS yearbooks and did some basic internet investigation.
Did you find any evidence that supports the motive to this alternative suspect?
Yes, I obtained an electronic recording from a court proceeding. Jonathan Rollins, who is Blair Rollins' father, was on trial for murder, and Mackenzie Brackman was his attorney.
Do you know what happened in this trial?
Yes, I listened to the court recording of this trial.
Was Blair Rollins present at his father's trial?
Yes, Blair Rollins was present, further amplifying his motive. In another court recording, Blair spoke on his father's behalf.
Is this recording accurate?
Yes.
At this time, Your Honor, I'd like to enter Exhibit 22 into evidence.
Yes, Your Honor. I object to hearsay, and opposing counsel has not showed Exhibit 22.
In response,
Go ahead.
In response to hearsay under Rule 803-3, this is a statement of a plan. And if I may make an offer of proof, in the recording it says, Jonathan Rollins says to Brackman, "I will get back at you if it's the last thing that I will do."
Your Honor, if I may respond.
You may.
I believe that this is being offered for the truth of the matter. Additionally, opposing counsel has still not shown Exhibit 22 to the court. Screen shared it before admitting it, is what I mean.
Your Honor, we were going to screen share it after we entered it.
Okay, in terms of the screen sharing, I'm going to, I guess my first question would be, have you seen the exhibit, Ms. Walters?
I have, Your Honor.
Okay. And as such, other than the fact that she hasn't screen shared it, any objection authenticity wise?
No, Your Honor.
All right. And then in terms of hearsay, at this time, I'll go ahead and overrule the objection, and you may go ahead and admit and publish the exhibit.
Thank you, Your Honor. May my co-counsel please play the audio clip?
I'll get you back, Brackman, if it's the last thing I do.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. Is there any other reasons why you believe Blair Rollins is a possible suspect?
Blair Rollins matches the height and build of the intruder in the Ring doorbell video.
Is Blair Rollins in Colorado anymore?
No, using some basic internet investigation techniques, I determined that Blair Rollins has fled the state of Colorado.
Do you think Blair Rollins should have been a suspect for this case?
Yes, I concluded that Blair Rollins should have been a suspect in this case.
No further questions.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Professor. Let's start by talking more about your background. You were once a police officer, correct?
Yes, I was.
But you became disillusioned with police work.
Yes, I didn't have a great experience.
Because of its tactics and techniques?
Somewhat, yes.
And as a result of this, you quit.
I did.
And you now teach a college course on police practices.
I do.
And social justice.
I, in fact, do.
And you frequently testify as an expert.
Yes, I do.
But you only testify as an expert for the defense.
Yes.
And you tend to think of yourself as a check on the power of the police.
Yes, once again, due to my unfortunate experiences.
Now, let's briefly talk about your findings. You agree that the evidence found at the scene points to an intruder entering the home, correct?
Yes.
And you're aware that scuff marks were found at the scene?
Yes.
You're aware that a chair was found in the dining area knocked over?
Yes.
You're aware that there was a broken plate on the floor?
I, in fact, am.
And you're aware that there was a drawer in the kitchen that was left open?
Yeah, sure.
That there was an empty slot in a knife block on the counter?
Sure.
That the defendant wasn't at school on March 6th?
No, she wasn't. She was looking for her phone.
I'm not asking where she was. I'm just simply asking that she wasn't at school, and she wasn't, was she?
No, with an alibi, but no.
Now let's talk about your cell phone data analysis. You would agree that a cell phone usually connects to the nearest cell tower,
Yeah, usually.
but you think it's possible that a cell phone could connect to a more distant tower.
Yeah, it possibly could.
But you would agree that it is more likely for it to connect to the nearest tower.
Yes, more likely, but the alternative is absolutely a possibility.
Now, cell tower 1197 is near the Brackman residence,
Yes.
and a cell tower has 3 antennas,
Yes.
and each antenna covers a 120-degree arc.
Yes.
And antenna number 1 of cell tower 1197, which is that bottom cell tower, covers the Brackman residence.
Yes, it does.
And Avery Becker's phone connected to antenna number 1 of cell tower 1197.
Her phone, not Avery.
And not only did Miss Becker's phone connect once, but 3 separate times.
Yes.
It connected to tower 1197 at 1:05 p.m.,
Yes.
then again at 1:06 p.m.,
Yes.
and once more at 1:17 p.m.
Yes, the phone connected, but Avery wasn't cited at being there.
I'm not asking if Miss Becker was there. I'm just simply asking if Avery Becker's phone connected to the cell tower 1197 3 separate times.
Sure, her phone connected to the tower.
And Avery Becker's phone connected to tower 1197, which was close to the Brackman house, 3 separate times around the exact time that Mr. Brackman was murdered, correct?
Sure, if you consider 6 miles close.
Thank you. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Van Owen, just to clarify, though Miss Becker stated that she didn't have her phone, correct?
Yes, she in fact did.
Objection,
And
like the scope of cross.
I'll overrule the objection. You can continue.
and no further questions, Your Honor.
Okay, based on that question alone, any recross?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. At this time, Mr. Van Owen can step down. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
Yes, the defense calls Taylor Perkins to the stand.
All right. And Mr. Perkins, you may take the stand and you may begin direct examination.
Good morning. Please introduce yourself.
My name is Tyler Perkins.
And what do you do, Mr. Perkins?
I am a freshman at CU Boulder and currently studying software engineering.
Were you a part of any activities in high school?
Yes, I was only a part of mock trial.
And do you know Avery Becker?
Yes, I know Avery Becker. We are best friends.
How do you know Avery?
Avery and I were friends since elementary, and we hanged out a lot.
When did you and Avery join the CHS mock trial team?
We joined the CH mock trial team our freshman year and were a part of it every single year.
And what was mock trial like?
Mock trial was boring, and I didn't really take it seriously. I didn't feel like it was trash.
From what you've noticed, did any of your teammates come unprepared or late to practice?
Avery came late and unprepared, although she did have a talent for mock trial, even unprepared.
What was your relationship with the coach like?
I thought the coach was mediocre because he often made bad choices for the team, and you know what they say: those who can do, and those who can't coach.
Were you able to watch Coach Sorry. Were you able to watch Coach Brackman and Avery interact?
Yes, I saw many times when they interacted.
I'm sorry, Mr. Perkins, I can't hear you.
Can you repeat the question?
Were you able to watch Coach Brackman and Avery interact?
Yes, I saw them interact many times.
And based on your observations, what was their relationship like?
Their relationship was rocky because Brackman would get mad and yell at Avery for coming unprepared and late to practice.
And you were at practice the day that Avery got demoted, but you didn't see the actual demotion, correct?
Yes, Coach Brackman was angry when Avery came to practice late and unprepared, which made the coach decide to demote Avery to B team. I thought the demotion was unfair because Avery was the most skillful and had a natural talent to mock trial.
What happened as a result of this demotion?
I stepped down from the A team.
And was there any particular reason why you quit the team?
There were many factors to why I stepped down from the team. Mock trial meant more to Avery than me, and I wanted to be on a team with a friend. Besides, I don't want to become a lawyer.
And after regionals, did Avery try to get back on the team?
Yes, Avery and I talked about every way she could join the mock trial team again.
What did Avery do to try to get back on the team?
Avery was very sorry to Brackman, and she tried everything she could to get back on the team.
Moving on, do you recall March 5th?
Yes, I recall March 5th.
What did you do that day?
Avery swung by my house, and we played games on our phones for a while.
Did you go anywhere?
We went to the mall to do some shopping, and then we visited the Fry Shack.
Who else was at the Fry Shack?
Alex and most of the mock trial team members showed up a few minutes later.
What happened while you were there?
There was a little smoke. Alex and Avery got into an argument.
What did Avery do about this?
Avery stormed away to the bathrooms.
Did anyone leave anything?
I think that Avery left her phone on the table. It was so shocking because it was like a third kidney to her. She would never be apart from it, not even for a few seconds.
Did you realize at the time that Avery did not have her phone?
At the time, I did not realize the phone was missing until the very next day.
Speaking of the next day, what did you do on March 6th?
Avery and I did school that day. We had finished our reading finals and classes were going to be boring and dry.
Was there any particular reason why you ditched?
We were going to look for Avery's missing phone.
What did you do?
We tried to retrace our steps to find the missing phone.
And what methods did you use to try to find this missing phone?
We called and texted the phone many times to see if we could hear it.
And where did you go?
We visited every store in the mall to see if the phone was there, and then we tracked in the Fry Shack.
Were you and Avery together the entire time?
Yes, me and Avery were together the whole time at the mall and at the Fry Shack.
So you're the only person with Avery the day of Coach Brackman's murder?
Yes, I was the only person with Avery and at the day of Coach Brackman's murder. But my employees working in the stores can verify that we visited them.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Mr. Perkins. I want to start by talking a little bit about the defendant's relationship with Mr. Brackman. So you and Avery were on the mock trial team, correct?
Yes, we were on the A team.
And Mr. Brackman was your coach?
Yes, he was our coach for the 4 years we were in mock trial.
So throughout these 4 years, you were able to observe their relationship, correct?
Yes, I has observed the relationship many times.
Mr. Brackman didn't like how Avery prepared, correct?
Yes, this is correct. He didn't like how Avery prepared.
In fact, he called Avery unprepared.
Yes, he called Avery unprepared.
He called them lazy.
Yes.
He said that she didn't try hard enough.
Yes.
And all of this seemed to bother Avery, didn't it?
Yes, it bothered Avery very much.
Mr. Perkins, you and Avery were on the mock trial team for 4 years, correct?
Yes, we were on the mock trial team for 4 years.
And Mr. Brackman was your coach for all 4 of those years?
Yes, he was our coach for all 4 years.
Now, fast forwarding a little bit, just after regionals, Avery was kicked off the team by Mr. Brackman, correct?
Yes, he kicked her off.
And as you said on direct, she tried everything to get back on.
Yeah, she tried everything to get back on the team.
You even think that Avery went so far as to text everyone on the team for help. I think you cut out there for a second, Mr. Perkins. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Mr. Perkins? I think you cut out for a
Yes.
minute.
Can you please repeat the question?
Of course. You even think that Avery went so far as to text everyone on the team for help.
Yes. I think that she texted everyone on the team.
Including, you think, Alex Cifuentes.
Yes, including Alex De Fuentes.
Mr. Perkins, I would now like to talk a little bit about the defendant's phone. So the day of March 6th, 2020, you say that you were with the defendant all day looking for her phone. Can you hear me, Mr. Perkins? Your Honor, I believe there is a connection issue. Could time be paused until the issue is resolved?
Yeah, and Mr. Perkins, are you still able to connect?
I'm here.
Okay. Why don't you go ahead and re-ask that question and we'll go from there.
Mr. Perkins, the day of March 6th, 2020, you say that you were with the defendant all day looking for her phone.
Yes, I was with Avery the whole day looking for her phone.
But the defendant always had her phone with her, didn't she?
Yes, she did, but there was an incident at the Fresh Shack which caused her to leave her phone on the table.
Mr. Perkins, that wasn't quite my question. All I asked was if the defendant always had her phone with her, and she did, didn't she?
Yes, she did.
In fact, that phone was like a third kidney to her.
Yes, like most teenagers, their phones are very precious to them.
She never went anywhere without it.
No, she never was apart from it for long.
And on the morning of March 6th, the defendant picked you up.
Yes, the defendant picked me up.
She hadn't been answering your texts all morning.
No, she didn't pick up any of my texts, which is strange.
And it wasn't until you mentioned this to Avery that she realized her phone was missing, correct?
Yes, this is true.
So just to clarify, the defendant did not realize her phone had been missing until the morning after she lost it.
Yes.
Now, Mr. Perkins, 1 week before regionals, you quit the mock trial team, correct?
Yes, I stepped down from the mock trial team.
And you quit in support of your friend, the defendant, who's kicked off.
Yes, but there was also many other factors because I didn't want to become a lawyer and I really like mock trial.
But Mr. Perkins, Avery was a big reason why you quit the mock trial team.
She was one of the factors, yes.
Now, you know the defendant well, correct?
Yes, I know her since elementary.
In fact, you are her best friend.
Yes.
And you are also the only one here in court today who can corroborate her alibi for the day of March 6th, aren't you?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
Okay, redirect.
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Perkins, Avery and yourself were together the entire day on March 6, 2020, correct?
Yes, we were together the whole time.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading question.
I'll overrule it, but let's try to keep them open-ended.
Did anyone at the mall see you and Avery?
Mall employees can verify that we visited their stores to look for the missing phone.
Thank you. No more questions, Your Honor.
Okay, based on those few questions, any recross?
No recross, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Mr. Perkins, you may step down. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
Yes, Your Honor. The defense wishes to call Avery Becker to the stand.
All right, please take the stand, Ms. Becker, and you may begin.
Can you please introduce yourself to the court?
My name is Avery Becker.
And why are you here today, Ms. Becker?
I was wrongfully accused of murdering Mr. Brackman.
And how did you know Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman was my old high school mock trial coach.
And did you kill your coach, Mr. Brackman?
Absolutely not.
And what school did you previously attend?
I was a senior last year at Colorado High School, otherwise known as CHS.
And were you a part of any extracurriculars?
Yeah, I was a part of the mock trial team for all 4 years of high school, and I was also part of the National Honor Society.
Can you tell us about your experience?
I'm sorry, you cut out. Could you repeat the question?
Can you please tell us about your experience with mock trial?
Yeah, mock trial was a fun experience for me. I was on the A team, which is the most difficult team to get on, and I also won Best Attorney at regionals last year, which was fun.
And can you tell us about your relationship with your coach, Mr. Brackman?
Mr. Brackman and I had a rocky relationship, some would say. I never really liked how he would make us memorize these scripts, and he would get so mad whenever we would go off them. But that's what I thought would get us awards, but it's also what got us into some heated moments sometimes.
Can you explain what happened during these heated moments?
Well, one time Mr. Brackman and I got into this argument, you could say, because I went off script and he had the nerve to demote me to B team over it.
And what happened when you were demoted?
Well, my friend Taylor Perkins ended up quitting the team not too long after, and Mr. Brackman put me back on A team, but that didn't last too long.
That didn't last too long. What do you mean?
Well, like I said, at regionals, I won Best Attorney Award. But at the practice after, Mr. Brackman completely embarrassed me in front of the whole team and told me I didn't deserve it. I was so upset in the moment and did the most stupid, regrettable thing that I've ever done, which caused him to kick me off the team.
When Brackman kicked you off the team, how did you feel?
I felt absolutely awful, of course. I was angry and upset at first that my mock trial career was completely over. I mean, it was my senior year and I never even got the chance to finish it. But I do understand why I got kicked off.
What did you do to get you kicked off the team?
Out of anger, I took a marker, which I thought was a dry erase marker at the time, and wrote Worst Attorney Award on his car, but I immediately regretted it.
And did you ever get to apologize to Mr. Brackman?
I wasn't ever able to apologize in person. I tried to the day after it happened, but his secretary told me he wasn't available and didn't want to talk to me. So I texted him telling him I was sorry instead, but he unfortunately passed away before I was ever able to apologize in person.
And where were you on March 6th?
I was at the mall with my friend Taylor Perkins on March 6th.
And why were you at the mall?
We were looking for my phone because it went missing at the Fry Shack.
Why were you at the Fry Shack?
Because the last time I saw my phone was at the Fry Shack the day before.
So, do you all remember being at the Fry Shack that day?
Well, me and Taylor were there, and some other mock trial members were also there, and we did see Alex Fuentes.
And how do you...
I'm sorry, you cut out again.
How do you know Alex Fuentes?
Well, Alex and I were teammates on the mock trial team in high school.
And would you say you and Alex are friends?
Alex would say we're friends, but I don't really think we were.
And you were there locating your phone. What did you do to try to locate it?
Well, we were calling my phone using Taylor's phone to try and find it.
And what would happen when you called the phone?
It would go straight to voicemail, so we assumed it was either stolen or dead.
And just because, did you go to Mr. Brackman's house on the day he was murdered?
I was with Taylor all day, and I don't even know where he lives.
So, did you kill Mr.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Your Honor, I'm just trying to clarify the verdict we are asking to return.
I'll overrule. You can ask that question.
Did you kill Mr. Brackman?
No, I could never do anything like that.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Good afternoon, Miss Becker. I have just a couple of questions for you. You're good friends with Taylor Perkins, aren't you?
Yeah, we have been for a while.
And you claim that you were with Taylor Perkins on March 6th, the day Mr. Brackman died, correct?
Yeah, because I was.
And no one else in this courtroom actually saw you on March 6th, did they?
Not other than Taylor Perkins, no.
And to be clear, you weren't at school that day, were you?
No, I was at the mall with Taylor.
And you say that you lost your phone the day before on March 5th, isn't that true?
Yeah, I did.
And you also claim that you didn't know it was missing until the next morning, correct?
Yeah, I just didn't realize it was gone that night.
I'd like to talk to you also a little bit about your coach. You didn't always get along with Mr. Brackman, did you?
We had different thoughts about how we should do mock trial, so we definitely didn't always agree on that aspect.
Mr. Brackman called you lazy, didn't he?
He did.
You felt that Mr. Brackman hadn't ever given you the credit that you deserved. Isn't that true?
That's true.
And just 1 month before your regional tournament, Mr. Brackman demoted you from the A team down to the B team, didn't he?
Yeah, he did.
And you tried everything to get back onto the A team.
Yeah, I did.
But Mr. Brackman didn't originally want to let you back onto the A team, correct?
No, he did not.
Only after your good friend Taylor Perkins quit the team were you allowed back on the A team.
Yeah, Taylor knew how much mock trial meant to me, so he did that.
And at your regional tournament, you won some awards, didn't you?
I did.
And right after Mr. Brackman told you you didn't deserve those awards.
He did.
Mr. Brackman told you that your closing was lucky.
He did tell me that.
And he said all those things in front of everybody at practice, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
And that made you really angry, isn't that true?
Like, of course it made me upset that my own coach didn't think I deserved it.
And because you were really angry, you left practice, didn't you?
I did.
And you went outside to the parking lot.
Yes.
And you saw Mr. Brackman's car in the parking lot, didn't you?
I did.
And you knew that Mr. Brackman loved that car.
Yeah.
And you went over to that car and you wrote Worst Attorney Award on that car in permanent marker, didn't you?
It was a bad moment mistake out of frustration, and I thought it was a dry erase marker. I never meant for it to be permanent.
Miss Becker, I'm not asking why you did it or how you feel about what happened. I'm just asking what you did. And you wrote Worst Attorney Award on Mr. Brackman's car, didn't you?
I did write that.
And then Mr. Brackman came outside and he saw what you had done.
Yeah.
Mr. Brackman then yelled at you again that day.
He did, understandably.
And Mr. Brackman threw you off the mock trial team permanently, didn't he?
Yeah.
And that night you went home, correct?
I did.
And you told your mom that Mr. Brackman had gotten on you for no good reason. Isn't that correct?
He did at first, yeah.
And then you told your mom that you were going to get back at Mr. Brackman if it was the last thing you ever did, didn't you?
I mean, I didn't mean it.
Miss Becker, I'm not asking how you feel about that. I'm just asking what you said. And you said that you were going to get back at Mr. Brackman if it was the last thing you ever did. And you said that, didn't you?
I did in that moment of...
Thank you, Your Honor. No further questions.
Any redirect?
Yes, Your Honor. So, Miss Becker, you did.
I'm sorry, you cut out. Could you repeat that?
Ms. Becker, getting kicked off the team, how did it make you feel?
I mean, terrible. I understand why I got kicked off, but it was still mock trial meant so much to me.
And you got kicked off because of the vandalism incident. So you said you tried to apologize.
I did. I tried multiple times. He just didn't want to talk to me in person, which I understand.
No further questions, Your Honor.
And based on those few questions, any recross?
None, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, Ms. Becker. You may step down. Does the defense have any further witnesses?
No, Your Honor, the defense rests.
All right, at this time, we'll move into closing arguments. Are both parties ready to proceed?
Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, Your Honor.
The prosecution may begin their closing argument.
Just one moment for me to organize my things, Your Honor. She wanted revenge. She got it. Avery Becker needed revenge. She had trashed her coach's car. She'd been thrown off the mock trial. She had to raise the stakes because if there was no mock trial, she had to at least get even. So Avery Becker put on a disguise and went to Mackenzie Brackman's home to trash it. But a struggle ensued and Mackenzie Brackman ended up dead. She wanted revenge. She got it. Today, the prosecution has charged Avery Becker with murder in the first degree and burglary in the second degree. As the prosecution, we had to prove to you today that Avery Becker knowingly and intentionally entered unlawfully into Mackenzie Brackman's home, and that while she was there, Mackenzie Brackman died. And members of the jury, the prosecution did not have to prove today that Avery Becker ever went to Mackenzie Brackman's home with the intention of killing Mackenzie Brackman. Only that while committing the crime of burglary, Mackenzie Brackman died. And we had to prove these things to you today beyond a reasonable doubt. We have done exactly that by showing you how the defendant wanted revenge and how she got it. Members of the jury, it's very simple. On March 6, 2020, Avery Becker had a score to settle. She was mad about being thrown off the mock trial team, mad that Mackenzie Brackman had never given her the credit that she deserved. She had already trashed her coach's car, but he'd thrown her off the mock trial team and she needed to make him feel just a little bit of the pain and anguish that she felt. So she texted Alex Cifuentes, her intent, which you saw spelled out word for word in front of you. Her intent to go to Mackenzie Brackman's home and trash it as payback. But members of the jury, we don't just have to take the defendant's own words for it, because we know where Avery Becker was on March 6th. We know that Avery Becker was at Mackenzie Brackman's house. Detective Markowitz told you today how the defendant's phone connected to the cell phone tower covering Mackenzie Brackman's house. A cell phone tower the defendant's phone never should have connected to. A cell phone tower the defendant's phone connected to 3 separate times. Once is a coincidence, twice is an accident. 3 times is proof. We know the defendant was in the area. We know that the defendant is the one from the Ring doorbells, that the defendant's size and build match with the person from those videos. We know that the defendant was at Mackenzie Brackman's home. She wanted revenge. She got it. Today, the defense asked you to believe that the prosecution came to the easy conclusion. But members of the jury, that's simply just not true. The prosecution brought before you evidence after evidence, showing you that it was the defendant who had the intent, that it was the defendant who was seen on camera carrying out these crimes. And that today, the prosecution didn't choose the easy conclusion. They chose the right one. We ask you for a verdict of guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. Does the defense wish to give a closing argument?
Yes, Your Honor. An easy conclusion. Avery Becker is a normal kid who was blamed for a murder of a coach. Today, you have heard from 3 people Avery Becker's side of the story. You see, the prosecution's case has holes in it. Not only does Avery Becker have an alibi, but the investigation was sloppy and left lots of unanswered questions. And there was an alternative suspect. Today, Avery Becker has been charged with first-degree murder and second-degree burglary. With these charges, the prosecution has the burden of proof. They have to prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker broke into Coach Brackman's home with the intention to vandalize it and killed Coach Brackman in the process. But you see, that's just not possible because Avery Becker had an alibi. She was at the mall all day the day of the murder with her friend Taylor Perkins. Not only has Avery Becker told you that, but so has Ms. Perkins. So how would it be possible for Ms. Becker to commit a crime if she wasn't even there? The investigation decided to ignore these simple things because they chose the easy conclusion of Ms. Becker. An easy conclusion. The investigation was sloppy. The only reason that Avery Becker was a suspect was because Mr. Fuentes had sent in screenshots to Ms. Markowitz that showed what Avery Becker had told her. But you see, there's no way to prove if these screenshots are real or not. For all we know, they could be forged. And the police could have avoided this simple question by doing one thing: obtaining Alex Fuentes' phone. But they didn't. Continuing with the sloppy investigation, there was a Ring doorbell video that the investigation was based off of. In this video, the suspect was covered head to toe with a mask and gloves. There was no way to tell who this person was. There was no way to tell the gender, race, or even age of this person. So how did the prosecution know that this was Ms. Becker? They didn't. They just went off the fact this person was the same height and build. But the thing is, there's many people in this world that are the same height. The biggest hole of all was that they were basing where Ms. Becker was based off where her cell phone was. You heard today from Mr. Blake Van Owen that cell phone towers are not a GPS. They simply show a range of where a person is within 6 miles. To add on to that, Avery Becker didn't have her phone the day of the murder. So there's no way to tell where Ms. Becker was. The prosecution decided to ignore all these simple things because they chose the easy conclusion of Ms. Becker. An easy conclusion. There was an alternative suspect, Blair Rollins. Blair Rollins' father, Jonathan Rollins, was sentenced to life in prison by Coach Brackman. That gives him motive. To add on to that, Blair Rollins was not at school the day of murder. He was not in the state of Colorado anymore. The defense doesn't have to prove to you anything. But if a part of you believes that Blair Rollins was a suspect, that is reasonable doubt. The prosecution chose the easy conclusion of Ms. Becker. An easy conclusion. From what you have heard today, Avery Becker has an alibi. She was at the mall all day the day of the murder. The investigation was sloppy and left lots of unanswered questions. And that there was an alternative suspect that the police didn't even look into. I now ask you to find Avery Becker not guilty. Thank you.
Thank you. And for the prosecution, do you have any rebuttal?
I do, Your Honor. the easy conclusion. Members of the jury, Ms. Schneringer just got up here and tried to tell you once again that the prosecution came to the easy conclusion. But today, the prosecution is asking you to come to the right conclusion, as the prosecution has done over and over again. And the defense was supposed to try and bring you some reasonable doubt today. But members of the jury, they weren't able to do that because the prosecution proved to you each beyond a reasonable doubt that Avery Becker is the one who had the intent and is the one who followed through on her threats of Mackenzie Brackman. But let's talk about one of those things that the defense is trying to tell you is reasonable doubt. Blair Rollins is not reasonable doubt, members of the jury. They would have to ask you to believe that Blair Rollins stole the defendant's phone and then created an elaborate hoax to frame her. That's not reasonable doubt because that's simply just not reasonable. We ask you for a verdict that aligns with the fact that Avery Becker wanted revenge, and she got it. Find her guilty. Thank you.
All right, and that concludes round 2 of the Colorado Bar Association High School mock trial. If everyone would